Now, Lisa Chambers is still with us, and we're also joined by Eoghan Corry, editor of Air and Travel magazine, and via Skype by Nick Gammon, who's a pilot and a member of Recover Irish Aviation. Nick, you better explain, please, what Recover Irish Aviation is and who's involved in it and why.
Well, Recover Irish Aviation, good evening, Matt. To start, Recover Irish Aviation is a group of professionals working in the aviation industry, pilots, cabin crew, engineers, ground staff, etc., that came together as the pandemic really struck here in Ireland, because we have been one of probably the most affected industry, and an industry that has seen the least amount of light over the last 12 months. And we came together to form an organisation to help it raise its awareness and what needs to be done to see a meaningful return to travel, and what now looks like will be this summer.
Many of you have been laid off. Many have also had massive reductions in your income, haven't you?
We have indeed. For those of us who have been lucky to remain in employment, 50 to 75% would be the region of salary losses that we are seeing. Many of our colleagues have been made redundant and are suffering on the likes of the PUP now, with no sort of return to travel on the to employment rather on the horizon. For them, it's been very, very difficult for many people in our industry, but also, of course, for many people there are 143,000 people in Ireland reliant on the aviation sector, all of whom have been experiencing similar things to this.
So how frustrating has it been in the last week or so to see mixed messages coming out of government as to when foreign travel will be allowed again, to be deemed, at the moment, non-essential travel being not permitted?
Well, firstly, this is the first bit of good news that the aviation industry has seen in the last 12 months, and we welcome it. The adoption of things such as the digital green certificate, which is going to allow for people who have recovered from COVID-19 and have antibodies, people who have been vaccinated, and people who have tested negatively for COVID-19 to travel again. This is a massive ray of light for people in our industry. All we need now is for the government to fully implement this in a timely fashion. And the noises are right. We are going to start to see this. This is going to become legislation in June. So we would like to see it implemented to see travel shortly after that.
But Eoghan Corry, it would seem that the government doesn't seem particularly keen on allowing people to travel from June.
Well, we are a little bit slower than the rest of Europe, but the good news is that aviation has kept its shape. Willie Walsh had a session with him yesterday where he talked about the fact that there won't be long-term damage, that most of what can be done within aviation and safety terms, structure terms, has been done. The inventories are still in place. There is a little bit for, May, for instance, those routes from Dublin to Barcelona that Ryanair had cancelled. The cancellation's been extended into the beginning of June, but a lot of flights still in place. All those ambitious things like Aer Lingus, Los Angeles, San Francisco, all ready to roll. Ryanair loaded a full schedule for 2022 today, all the way through to October 2022.
Sorry, do you expect all the previous routes that were there before the COVID-19 pandemic and the volume of flights on those routes to return to normal quickly?
Well, you're from the city, Matt. You would know what Springer cattle do when they're released out into the grass. But when we get the go-ahead from the government to fly, there is an expectation that people are so fed up that they will actually start moving again. And the aviation industry has been putting all those things in place, the safety-wise, because this is an international problem. Europe's aviation is down by about 65%. They're the figures from Eurocontrol this afternoon across the 40 air traffic control regions of Europe, run by an Irishman, Eamon Brennan. We're down 85%. We're in a little bit deeper hole than anyone else, but aviation is very important for us. And I think our debate would probably move a little bit slower than the rest of Europe, because we do have we have gone into a little bit of a negativity about international travel, understandably, from that scare we got in January when our numbers doubled. But as we see the rest of Europe opening up, I think Ireland will follow. We'll probably be 6 to 8 weeks behind the rest of Europe.
I think our numbers more than doubled in January. But what about summer? We keep hearing from various cabinet ministers later in summer, but no definition as to what do they mean by summer. Is it June, July, August? When is it?
Well, it's a good question, because, I mean, what you consider to be summer might be different to what I consider to be summer. So, I mean, you're probably looking July, August, being ambitious. I can't see June, being honest about it. I mean, when you think that we're just after implementing hotel quarantine, we're looking at India, all of these new variants. We're not fully through the vaccination programme yet. I honestly think the public don't want us to open up to international travel just yet. I think they would be quite frightened. I personally would be as well, to have it happen too soon. You know, we've come too far.
Even if 80% of the population have at least got their first dose of the vaccine by the end of June.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we get to that level and we see where we're at then, it's difficult to predict, because we've seen the volatility of the vaccine supply. We're getting new strains all of the time. The reason we have hotel quarantine is not because, I mean, the government were quite reluctant to implement a hotel quarantine, as we remember, but there was huge public demand for that because people really wanted to stop new variants coming into the country. So, you know, I think the public will have a significant opinion on this. I'm not sure. June feels a little bit soon. Don't get me wrong. I would love to see things open up, and I have real sympathy for Nick.
But the UK is opening up on the 17th of May.
Yeah, and like the UK have taken quite. Remember, the UK's death toll is quite significantly higher than ours. You know, they haven't had the most fabulous experience through the pandemic either. Their vaccine programme is going well. They've taken a different approach to us. They're outside the European Union as well. They're on a different pathway to us. We're not that far behind them. And look, I wish them well, and we want to see the sector open up as quickly as possible.
Well, let me go back to Nick on this, because Nick, what impact do you think will it have on the morale and mood in this country if we see English people flying off to their holidays from the 17th of May onwards?
Well, I think it's important here not to forget that we share an open border with the United Kingdom, namely through Belfast. And we are going to see international travel on and off this island this summer, whether we like it or not. And that will be through Belfast if we do not get on board with these policies now put in place by the European Commission. Last week, the airlines and other key stakeholders published what was called the Aviation Restart Plan. The government needs to get on and support that. And I welcome comments from Eoghan there suggesting that this is looking positive. This is only looking positive if the government engages properly on the Aviation Restart Plan, the Digital Green Certificate and the EU traffic light system. Otherwise, we will see a situation where everybody just drives up and flies out of Belfast.
But they're way ahead of us, Eoghan, when it comes to vaccinations in Britain and Northern Ireland. And as much as anything, it might be one dose of the vaccine only by the end of June. It looks like that under this traffic light system, people will have to have had both their doses of the vaccine before they can travel.
It's not just about Britain, Matt. We're there's a lot of media from Britain fed here, but the rest of Europe will move as a unit on this. So we've seen Southern Europe agitating very, very heavily for the green certificate, and Northern Europe a little bit slower on it. But the future for us in planning is to stick closely to what's coming from Europe, because nobody is disregarding the health of their population on this. What we've seen in Ireland is probably just looking at things like the emails that were released under the Freedom of Information Act, a lot of pushback at the fact we couldn't move 5 kilometres, and our own citizens were, about 80,000 of them were living out in Spain, and people were going to Poland and Romania to see their visitors. It's not the same sort of resistance to international travel that some of the other jurisdictions
around the world have. It's very odd that we're having this discussion about opening up international travel to let people go on summer holidays in only a couple of months' time, just after we were introduced mandatory hotel quarantine, and we were hearing before the break from Professor Paul Moyna about the Indian variant and other things coming into the country. How can we try and square that off?
It's going to be difficult. We shouldn't have gone down the route of mandatory hotel quarantine. It was largely a reaction to public pressure, and it's largely about optics. What it will achieve in terms of public health, I'm not exactly sure. It's been given a lot of expectation. There was a sense that this would be a big solution to our problems. Our problems are being solved. Our numbers are going back right across Europe. For instance, tonight, Czechia, which was the basket case of Europe in terms of the number of cases, it's come way back down to mid-table. So right across Europe, this is a shared problem. There's lots of other people going through these phases on this, but none of them, by the way, are introducing things like mandatory hotel quarantine.
Of course, Lisa, we're talking about foreign holidays in the summer. There doesn't seem to be even any guarantee as to when we can start having domestic holidays. No guarantee that we will be allowed to travel between counties before the end of June, which means many of our hotels possibly won't be able to open up until July.
Yeah, no, and it is a problem, and indications are that we won't have inter-county travel probably until June. For hoteliers, I've talked to colleagues, that it's not simply a case of just opening up your doors tomorrow. You have to rehire staff. Many of them have moved on because it's been a year. You have to get stock in, so you do need advance notice. And I think people will be looking mainly to domestic holidays. But as Eoghan pointed out just on the break, actually, that, the Irish tourism industry, the domestic industry, the retail sector, hospitality, rely on inward tourism as well, and people coming to visit Ireland. So, the sector won't be just served by domestic tourism. And the Taoiseach has indicated...
Do you think would foreign people be welcome on holidays to Ireland this summer?
Look, we're a very welcoming country, and I think if there's a government policy, if it's based on evidence, on good advice, if we're aligned with the European Union, and the Taoiseach has indicated that we do want to align with the EU, with the digital cert and with the traffic light system. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to do that. But of course, we will put priority will be public health in the country, as always. And it's just too early to really say for sure how things will
what are you hearing about people coming into the country on holiday? Would they really be welcomed, given that we've just put mandatory hotel quarantine in because of our fears of foreigners?
It's a big problem. The international coverage of Ireland, we've spent 100 years building up the 100,000 welcomes, the Céad Míle Fáilte, and the international coverage hasn't been good for that. The thing is that it's short term, it's April, it's not that big a deal. If it runs through the summer and runs through a phase where the rest of Europe opens up and we're left behind, it becomes a problem. You can overstate the problem where we are now, but remember this: international aviation down 65%. Our hole is deeper, 85% down, and some people still want to keep digging that hole.
Thank you very much. We'll leave it there. Our thanks to Eoghan Corry and Nick Gammon for joining us.